Hi, welcome to this tool time presentation. The topic for discussion is my effective, more helpful new belief. The E in an ABCDE of rational emotive behaviour therapy, REBT. As I go through this presentation, perhaps I'll cut myself some slack and breathe. So if I find myself getting upset or disturbed, I might breathe in through my nose for 4, hold for a second, out through my mouth for 8, hold for a second, especially focusing on the way my belly moves when I'm breathing, my diaphragmic breathing. Apparently, focusing on diaphragmic or belly breathing is a way to reduce nervous tension by 40 to 60%. I commend that to you as potentially helpful. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, hold. I might do that any time during the day I'm feeling upset or disturbed. Having said all that, discomfort or upset might indicate that growth is occurring or is becoming a bit more possible. I might actually sit with this discomfort or upset for a moment and just see where it could be heading. I might give myself permission to feel uncomfortable. As I go through this presentation, I might choose to do what I can with what I have where I am. Do what I can with what I have where I am. In this presentation, and as a result of it, I ain't got to do nothing. I'm not required to do anything. I might choose to, however. If I see something in this presentation that I think, hey, I don't like the look of that at all, I might put it aside and not touch it, or maybe come back to it at a later time. If I see something in this presentation and I think, hey, I think that could help me, I might actually grab it and run with it. I'm not required to do anything. It's entirely up to me. I ain't got to do nothing. A quote taken from someone will be changed to make it first person, less absolute and less telling. It is still attributed to the person where possible. I'll especially remove any multiple things. So managing thoughts will be changed to managing a thought rather than attempting to do everything at once. Where 2 question marks appear, please consider pausing the presentation and writing your answer in your journal or on a piece of paper, or even just pondering it for a moment to see what comes up for you. It's entirely up to you, of course. You ain't got to do nothing. Please consider pausing the presentation, however. An ABC from rational emotive behaviour therapy, and in this presentation we might actually look upon that as rational emotive behaviour training, where I'm actually choosing to maybe train myself in some way. If you haven't had a look at the ABC crash course, I commend it to you as something potentially helpful. These links are in the description box below. Please consider clicking on them and having a look at what might come up for you as a person, and maybe doing an ABC or 2 if you'd like to. Rather than an ABC making me a doormat, it is far more likely to set me free to fly. I might still passionately state my case after doing an ABC if I choose to. I might choose to give myself the right to ask and ask and ask and ask to be treated with respect and consideration. I might choose to do that. This is other than I have a right to be treated with respect and consideration. The other person might say, who says you have the right to control me and what I do? That is likely an unenforceable demand on another person or life in general. I might still choose to give myself the right to ask to be treated with respect and consideration. The ABC model, A is the activating event or thought or thing, what the camera would see without emotional interpretation. As a human, I do tend to interpret things from an emotional perspective. B, my belief or perception about the event or thought, or the way a person acting or reacting the way I am would be likely required to have a belief or thought. C is the consequence, or my emotional reaction to B, D is dispute, my closely held belief. My B, interview it, ask it how helpful it's being for me at the moment. E is effective new belief that I develop, maybe over time. It might seem that as I go through my life, a C I have comes about as a direct result of an A. My emotional consequence seems to come about as a direct result of an A activating event or thought. An emotional consequence might seem to naturally happen in me because of an activating event or thought. While that might be true to a degree, having a root canal done is not the same as a trip to Hawaii. I'm unlikely to have the exact same emotional reaction or response to those two. Often the magnitude of my C, my emotional consequence, is not in keeping with the A or activating event or thought. My emotional reaction might perhaps be more dictated by a belief or thought I have about an A, especially a demand I may be putting on an A. How dare that happen to me? To what degree might my belief, thought, or demand be causing an extra unnecessary or unhelpful emotional and behavioural response in me? Wow, interesting question. In REBT, it is put forward that my C, my emotional consequence, more closely equals my B or belief. My belief or perception or demand about the event or thought, the orientation of my mind, may be more responsible for my emotional reaction or emotional overreaction in me. An emotion might be a grand servant, however, it is likely a very poor master. Through an ABC, it may be possible to reduce or eliminate my extra emotional response, maybe some of the unhelpful or destructive part of my emotional response. Wow, that could be helpful. An emotion might be a grand servant, however, it is likely a very poor master. An emotion is likely a grand servant indeed. One person lost their ability to feel emotion through a tumour, another person through a stroke. Both were rendered unable to make a decision or to weigh up the relative importance of two choices. One of them was a master salesperson and they became unable to sell. They couldn't discuss with someone else the relative merits of a decision. Another person could have been, or it might have been the same person, was supposed to be at their daughter's graduation, and instead of that, they went to buy a toothbrush. And when their partner rang them and said, "Where are you?" they said, "I'm buying a toothbrush." And they said, "But it's your daughter's graduation." And they said, "Yes, but I need a toothbrush." A more helpful emotional response, perhaps a life better lived, maybe developed over time through my hierarchy of values, is seen as incredibly helpful in my bit more meaningfully lived life. So I'm not trying to become a emotional robot. What I'm attempting to do is have my emotions a bit more helpful rather than limiting or stopping me. Unhelpful belief in rational emotive behavior therapy is actually called irrational belief. In a meeting, a person said, "Gee, at the time it seemed perfectly rational to me. I think unhelpful would be a better way of speaking. So I've changed it in this meeting to unhelpful. You can, of course, do whatever you like. You ain't got to do nothing." You be or I be an unhelpful or irrational or ineffective belief, this conditioning, this wall or ceiling or container that I might have or find myself in, where might it have come from? Maybe a teacher, a friend, a family member, a member of the clergy, a bully, a media, the unhelpfully called social media, maybe an unhelpful or ineffective or irrational conclusion from my personal experience I have drawn and hold close in an attempt to keep me comfortable, unfrustrated, and a bit more certain. I must never feel this way again. Usually it narrows a behaviour choice of mine. So as a human, apparently what I do is I best guess my way through the world. So when something happens, I best guess a response, and it's normally a dramatic or severe response in order to keep myself a bit more comfortable, unfrustrated, and a bit more certain. So I'm best guessing my way through life and then using that as a rule or a fact for my future behaviour. A thought is like water flowing off a duck. The duck can grab the water and think it is the water and it will still be a duck. Thanks, Dr. Amy. Last week, we looked at disputation. If you haven't had a look at disputation, I commend it to you as something potentially helpful. The link is in the description box below. ABC disputation or challenge or query or interview. My thought to see how helpful it is being for me right at this minute. A disputation is better framed as an open-ended question, requires more than a yes or no answer, requires a more in-depth thought-out response. What I'm trying to do is to get my wonderful brain off the couch, get it to actually participate in my life and work out what is more helpful for me. That could take a little bit of effort. There are three basic types of disputation: logical, how might it follow that what I'm saying is true? Evidence-based or empirical or scientific, where might the evidence be that what I'm saying is true? Practical or pragmatic or functional, if I keep believing what I'm choosing to tell myself, how helpful is it to me right now? Even if it is true, how might I put it aside and focus on it a little bit less, or attempt to focus on it hardly at all? If anyone's saying what is in this presentation is easy, they've obviously never done it. An idea that my wonderful brain might like to entertain is that it could be a little bit more possible than my sensational brain is telling me at the moment. Thanks, brain. Once my unhelpful belief is gently, kindly, and thoroughly interviewed, then I may choose to let it go and attempt to form my effective new belief, a bit more helpful belief, or a bit more growth orientation of my mind, if you don't mind, brain. Rather than being broken or a robot or from another planet or need to throw myself out and start again, where I find myself at the moment is a very human place to be. Rather than being broken or a robot or from another planet or need to throw myself out and start again, I'm actually human. Who would have thought? Not me, that's for sure. The E of the ABC tool, ABCDE, of rational emotive behaviour therapy, is the focus of this session. A question I might ask: what might be a bit more effective new belief that could be a bit more helpful for me? Maybe permit a bit more growth in me. A belief that tends to be a bit more helpful or healthy might be a useful goal of doing an ABC. I attempt to dispute one of the three major musts and get a bit of a feel for what an E might look like. If you haven't had a look at the three major musts, the link is in the description box below. Please consider doing that if you'd like to. First major must: I must or should be perfect, do very well and win the approval of all others, be loved by all for every bit of my performance, or else I am no good and I deserve to suffer. Demand city: how might I be causing myself to feel and act with a belief like this? Please do consider pausing the presentation and maybe jotting down what you think. This is a common human thing. If I find myself with this sort of belief or something like it or a little bit of it, then I am human. Who would have thought? How might I interview or dispute this first major must? Kindly, gently and thoroughly question it, looking for the degree to which I might feel or believe this and attempt to let it go a tiny little bit. Relax away from it a tiny little bit. Because I say I must be perfect, how does it then follow that I will be? Well, it doesn't follow at all. How likely is it as a human that I might be perfect every single working moment or waking moment? Oh, not very likely. In what way might it be possible that I as a human might be loved by everyone? Well, I'm pretty sure someone does love me, but there's a lot of people that can't stand me, and good luck to them. How might this belief be keeping me safe, sober and alive, or trying a challenging thing out? Wow. I might ask my belief to stand up from that belief chair, ask it to turn around as I examine it in the light in detail with a gently searching open-ended question, perhaps on paper, suggest that it could be retrained to be more helpful, or gently lead it to the door and direct it outside, cease its employment, I do expect it to pop back in from time to time. I'll just show it to the door again. Thank you for your input. Your input is not being considered today. I haven't seen that thought for ages. Thanks for popping in. Love your work, brain, but not today. I've got stuff that I'd like to get done. Then I've made a bit of room for my effective new belief, which might be something like, now this effective new belief has been developed over quite a while, over years in fact. However, the frame of it was formed reasonably quickly. I do commend this to you as an idea. However, you will work on your own thoughts and ideas if you choose to, and that's entirely okay. While I prefer to do well, and that is my intention, I choose to appreciate that in my humanness, sometimes I may not do as well as I would like. I prefer to have a go at a new thing and fail magnificently sometime. I would really prefer that a person like me, I understand that a person may love me and a person may not like me. In fact, they could say they hate me. I like that a person likes me, and I choose to stand that a person not likes me. I acknowledge a person's freedom of choice to not like me, and I wish them well. And I will stay out of their company wherever possible. And if I can, forever. I may not do a part of this as well as I'd like at some time. So in my attempt to have my effective new belief, I may do it imperfectly as a human. What benefit might I enjoy from having this helpful or effective new belief instead of the first major must? How might I be causing myself to feel with a belief like this now? If I let go the notion of being perfect and acknowledge that I will have flawed attempts early on, however, I will probably improve over time. And if you don't like me, okay. If you love me, thank you. Perhaps a little bit more inclination to take a healthy risk in my life, speak in public, ask someone on a date, go for a promotion, etc. Perhaps an increased willingness to have a go at a thing. Look, I'm not going to be perfect, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to have a go. Maybe willingness to grow a little more from time to time, more willingness or courage to try a new thing, engage in a new activity, and enjoy my life a tiny little bit more. Thank you, Free Me 32. I trust you're keeping well. Thanks for that contribution. USA Unconditional Self-Acceptance as part of a solution to the first major must. If you haven't had a look at Kristin Neff, Overcoming an Objection to Self-Compassion, I commend it to you as perhaps worth having a look at. There's also USA Unconditional Self-Acceptance. It came from Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy. Both those links are in the description box below. The second major must. An other person must or should treat me considerately, fairly, and kindly, and in exactly the way I want them to treat me. If they don't, they are no good and they deserve to be condemned and punished to roast in hell. And I'll be the chief roaster as soon as I get there. And with this attitude, it won't be long. To what degree might I have this thought, or am I appearing to be acting or reacting like I might think this way, like I might have this orientation of my mind? Dispute or interview or question might be a first step in uncovering my unhelpful thought, my demand, gently, kindly, and thoroughly using an open-ended question. So my brain's not trying to stop me. Someone said during the week that there's a part of you that wants to keep you small. Now, I thought, well, is that the case? I don't believe it's the case. I think there's a part of me that wants me to be safe, unfrustrated, unworried, and a little bit more certain. And in that, it ends up that I'm a little bit smaller than I could be, but that's not the intention. My effective new belief might be something like, it would be nice if, and I prefer that, a person treats me considerately, fairly, and kindly. I understand that I may give myself the right to ask that this happen. However, I choose to accept that in their humanness, they may make a mistake or be incapable of doing it or unwilling to do it at this time. I choose to accept their humanness as I accept my own. I choose to stand whatever they do while choosing to ask for a more helpful outcome where possible. I may also choose to distance myself from a regularly unhelpful interaction where possible. I may not do a part of this as well as I'd like at some time. See you later, mashed potato. I'll get away from the person where possible, not be in their company as much as possible. If I am in their company and they're behaving in an unhelpful way, if possible, I'll ask them to please stop. If they refuse to, I'll just stand it and think, oh, well, it's where they are in life. I'd rather be me than them. In what way might this effective new belief be a bit more helpful to me rather than major must number 2 as I attempt to interact helpfully with another person? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe pondering this for a moment. It may be unlikely as a new belief to stand against major must number 2 unless I thoroughly question or interview major must number 2 and maybe get it to stand up from its chair and show it to the door a tiny little bit. There might not be a chair for my effective new belief to sit down in my wonderful brain and heart unless I choose to do this a little bit or a little bit more often. I might improve my skill over a bit of time. So this probably will be done pretty imperfectly initially and then mostly imperfectly going forward as I gradually work to make it a little bit more automatic. Third major must. Life, my world, must or should give me what I want when I want it. And I must not get what I don't want. It's terrible, awful if I don't get what I want, and I can't stand it. It's also called the terrible 2-year-old must with a bit of foot stamping. I see that in my unhelpful addictive behaviour the more I look at it, and I find it funny now, although I didn't find it funny at the time, of course. I was too busy stamping my foot. It might be helpful for me to interview or dispute this major must number 3, first to partially dislodge it. Gently, kindly and thoroughly, using an open-ended question, interview it for a job. Dispute it kindly with understanding and self-compassion. I'm not broken or a robot or from another planet. There is no requirement to throw myself out and start again. In my humanness, I've best guessed myself to this particular spot. I can actually purposefully put in some effort to move in a direction that's a little bit more helpful when and if I can. My effective new belief might be something like, while I might like to get what I want when I want it and prefer to not get a thing I don't want, I choose to accept that I might influence an outcome only so much, if at all. I will choose to put effort toward a thing I might prefer or that I see as helpful, while I choose to accept that I can probably live with whatever outcome might occur, while maybe not liking it as much. I may then choose to work with this outcome as I choose to put effort toward what I might prefer. I may not do a part of this as well as I'd like at some time. These effective new beliefs have been developed over quite a while. They started as a very small effective new belief, and I gradually built and developed it over time. I commend that process to you as something potentially helpful. I can imperfectly move forward or move in a direction that is a little bit more helpful. What emotional benefit might I enjoy from having something like this effective new belief rather than major must number 3 a little bit more in my life? I commend the idea of pausing the presentation and just sitting with that for a while and seeing what comes up for you. Think a little better now, do a little better now, feel a little better later. There's often a lag between altering my thinking or behaviour and feeling a little better. I might give myself permission to be in that discomfort for as long as is necessary. This is an attempt to pay attention to a thought of mine and to move my view, my orientation of mind a little toward what is perhaps a bit more in my better interest. As a person, I might tend to steer toward where I'm looking, or a thought I hold close, or an action I choose. So as I am going through my life, I'm actually steering towards where I'm looking, thinking, or behaving. My belief may disguise itself as a fact. Thanks, brain. I tend to completely believe what I tell myself, and you try and tell me different. Thanks, Two Putts. Rest in peace. Thanks for everything. In doing my ABC, I keep a watch out for discomfort avoidance. I watch out for a path of least resistance thought. Polar. Is this a path of least resistance, I'm thinking? Thanks, brain. In what way might I be making my life a bit easy now so that it might be quite a bit harder later, or be less deep now, or less rewarding, or less me? Maybe I can get me into this, brain. What might be an effective or helpful new belief? A belief which tends to promote my well-being, my health, my different life of my choosing, and me getting along with an other. A belief in which I have better identified the difference between desiring and requiring. A belief in which I tend to use prefer or desire or like rather than have to have, must have, should have, I want. All common human things. Thanks, brain. An effective new belief of mine may not simply happen as a natural result of my dispute or question. To develop my new effective new belief, might take intentional effort, reworking on paper preferably, and a wee bit of time. Can't I have it right now? Thanks, brain. I'm on the lookout for a half-assed belief, a weak It might accompany weakish disputing on my part. I may say, well, okay, so I guess I could live without my drinking or drugging buddy. As soon as I get a sufficient reminder or stimulus or trigger or thought, an I may run back to my older, stronger, as I haven't really weakened it, unhelpful belief. Maybe unhelpful thought equals unhelpful action equals unhelpful emotion equals unhelpful outcome. And more as a Venn diagram where they're sort of related and bouncing off each other. I commend the notion of this to you as potentially helpful, that they're all related, but maybe I can start with a thought and work towards an action, or start with an action and work towards a thought. A, B, C, D, E, rather than an A, B, C, I do being right or wrong. There may be a point for improvement each time I put effort into it. It might tend to improve over time as I rework it, perhaps on paper. A helpful benefit might come from me doing one of my ABCs in writing. I do commend that process to you. I know I'm harping on about it. However, writing it down could be helpful. And when I look back over time, I might think, hey, gee, how far have I come? Wow. Example from Smart Recovery Online, which is now gone. A, I am stuck in a traffic jam. C, I feel upset, frustrated, and angry. What might be my B, my belief? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe having a bit of a go. Unhelpful belief. I hate this traffic jam. Hate tends to erode the container in which it is stored. I can't stand it. It should not happen to me. Why didn't everyone just stay home? Dang it. I'm going to be late now, and it is this traffic jam's fault. I'll look like a fool. I might choose to dispute, to see the untruth in each of these, or the degree of untruth in each of them, or unreasonableness. What might form that's easy for me to say. What might form part of an effective new belief? Please consider pausing the presentation and maybe having a bit of a think about it. E, this came from a participant source. Trust you're keeping well. While I might not like this traffic jam, I accept that it exists. It is something out of my control. Getting angry is unlikely to help me get out of the jam or get me there on time. I guess I might just sit back, breathe, maybe in for 4, pause, out for 8, pause. And know I will get there when I get there. Maybe I might listen to a podcast or other helpful recording, an audio book maybe, while being stuck here, or some good music. I'm choosing to stay calm about it. Next time I might look to leave earlier to relieve time pressure and a fear of being late. Rather than this making me look like anything, I might accept it as a lesson. I choose to relax, breathe, and ignore my wonderful brain. Just relax, brain. We'll get there. E, a bit more preference-based rather than demand-based. Example, a new person in my life talks a lot about their ex-partner and recently during a rather intimate moment. Thank you very much. It's my emotional consequence, feeling of anger, jealousy, insecurity, uncertainty, defensiveness, deep sadness. What might be my B, my belief? Please consider pausing the presentation. UB, they should be over that person enough to focus on me. They must not talk about them. I'm not good enough or exciting enough. Disputation. Where is it written in stone in the universe that they should be over that person enough to focus on me? Well, it can't be because they appear not to be. Because I say my partner must not talk about their ex, how does it then follow that they won't? Well, they seem to just be emotionally triggered to do it. Where is the mountain of evidence for I'm not good enough or exciting enough really? How might this thought be helping me stay safe, sober, and alive and engage with this person? Effective new belief. This came from the place where I got this particular example. While a relationship might be a challenge, I am not required to let an insecurity of mine have free rein over my emotion. This relationship is fulfilling in some way, and it might be good for me to just buck up and talk to them about how their ex-partner chatter might affect me. If they don't get it, it may be the case that there will be another time when they are not considerate. So it might be good to know this now. I'm a person who might want a quality relationship. If we can't talk now, it is good to know that sooner rather than later. This probably got a little demanding toward the end. So this effective new belief is focusing a lot on the other person rather than on my emotional reaction. So maybe it's not as effective as perhaps I would like it to be or would benefit me as a person. 10 potentially confidence building and anxiety reducing helpful beliefs. The link is in the description box below. I commend them to you as worth a read just to see what comes up for you as a person. Number 3 of those is, even though a mistake or setback might be a common human thing, how might I work a bit toward accepting myself while still not liking a mistake or setback? What might I potentially learn the most from? 1, a successful outcome. 2, an unsuccessful outcome. What do you think? What might I learn the most from? 1, a successful outcome, or 2, an unsuccessful outcome? Number 6 of those, how might I better accept that I have one person's worth of value, even though a trait or behaviour of mine is or was not all that helpful? I might utilise unconditional self-acceptance, self-compassion, interview or question or dispute my unhelpful thought, or simply not take it as seriously. What might I do now where I am with what I have? As I know more later, maybe I'll do a little more later, and I won't beat myself up for what I did in the past when I didn't know as much or know that it was unhelpful. PMA, positive mental attitude, push my ass somehow, push my attitude, push my awesomeness. AMA, accept my ass. I'll just accept my ass. USA, unconditional self-acceptance. LDT, lowered discomfort tolerance. LFT, lowered frustration tolerance. LUT, lowered uncertainty tolerance. As a human, I tend to lower these as I go through my life. I can purposefully improve or increase them. A helpful belief to potentially help increase my frustration tolerance. It's in the description box below. I commend it to you as something perhaps worth having a look at. In the long run, the easier and less disciplined approach to pleasure and enjoyment may be less deeply rewarding than the more challenging or uncomfortable path. Yes, it is a bit of a pain to do this now, and I am better to do it now. It will likely be much more challenging, and I'll likely get a worse result if I do it later. Furthermore, I'll likely feel a bit better about my effort-taking ability by taking an action on this challenge now. The more I do, the more I can do. The less I do, the less I can do. I might consider moving away from a little bit, holding myself hostage with a thought of mine, being on the lookout for hyperbole, obvious and intentional exaggeration. In my wonderful brain, it might not seem that obvious to me at the moment, and it might not be intentional. It could just be that it's a thing I best guess myself into. An extravagant statement or figure of speech not intended to be taken literally, as to wait an eternity, always, never, etc. Absolutes where I paint myself into a corner and I can't possibly get out because it always happens or never happens. People who have used an ABC say of the result they enjoy, a feeling that might guide me rather than paralyze me. I experience it as getting out of my own way mentally. With a healthier E, I might be able to more easily go back and maybe influence the A a little bit. I love the freedom that comes with choosing my belief instead of feeling controlled by how I feel in the moment. What a wonderful thing. Perhaps I'll look at a value of mine from my hierarchy of values. Possibly I'll look at a resultant goal from my hierarchy of values. Maybe I'll select a thought I'll choose to dwell on and with that is supportive of my value and goal. I might look to be slightly more internally driven rather than externally directed by what is happening to me and around me, or what thought I might hold very close to me. Internally driven rather than externally directed a little bit more. It is perhaps worth giving some thought that my emotional consequence is more closely related to my belief, and that my emotional consequence doesn't automatically come about as a result of the activating event or thought, as much as I might tend to believe otherwise. Thanks, brain. I may choose to form my new effective belief. I might have it as an affirmation, a helpful or healthy belief of my own creation. Wow. I do not need a parachute to skydive. I only need a parachute to skydive twice. Luckily, attempting an ABC is nowhere near as life and death as this. It is more this thought or a different thought that I might evolve into. If a thing is worth doing, it is worth doing. What do you think? Poorly, as I learn to do it a little better. If a thing is worth doing, it is worth doing poorly, as I learn to do it a little bit better. Thanks, Zig Ziglar. If a thing is worth doing, participants have also said it is worth doing good enough, as good as I can at the moment, again, forever, period. Thanks, participants. In the end, it might come down to a matter of my choice. I might choose to be reactive and at the mercy of a world that might appear to be threatening, or I might choose to be more open to life and choose to see a remarkable possibility. Thanks, George and Sedina. With maybe little constructive or helpful thought, the reality of my life has built up around me. The place in which I live has been constructed with perhaps little active input from me. Rather than being an observer of my life, a person who experiences my life, I might choose to take a slightly more active part from time to time in how I might choose to experience a part of my life. Wow. Again, if anyone is saying this is easy, they've obviously never done it. An idea my wonderful brain might like to entertain when it stops busting my chops is that perhaps it's slightly more possible than my wonderful brain is telling me at the moment. Move a little along the line when I can, relaxing into it a little bit by breathing or exercise, from absolute must, should, have to, can't, need to, want, demand, to more preference-based, desire, like, select, choose, rather, prefer, ask. There is no person walking the face of the earth who has demonstrated more attempts at courage, dignity, honesty, and integrity on a daily basis than a person who formerly was in full flight unhelpful addictive behavior and is now seeking a different life and is on a path of self-discovery. Wow. Thanks, HughK, and more power to you. An ABC is other than to make me a doormat. It is much more likely to allow me to set myself free to fly. I might choose to give myself a little more the right to ask, and ask to be treated with respect and consideration. I might choose to give myself a little more the right to distance myself for a time or for good from a person who is unwilling or unable to treat me as I ask. I might see them very sparingly. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert mind, there are a few. If you are looking at this ABC process for the first time or very new to the process, your mind will come up with things that are going to be pretty insightful. I commend you to share them, if you'd like, with other like-minded people. Thanks, Buddha. I choose that a hope of mine rather than a hurt of mine shapes my future. Wow. Thanks, Robert. I choose that a hope of mine rather than a hurt of mine shapes my future. I see what I choose to see. I hear what I choose to hear. My belief system is like a filter that only shows me what I choose to believe. Thanks, Don Miguel. It has been the repetition of an affirmation of mine that has led to my belief. And as that belief became a deeper conviction, a thing began to happen. Wow. Thanks, Mohammed. When I believe something, the universe is on its way to being changed because I've changed by believing. Once I've changed and other things starts to follow. Isn't that the way it works? Thanks, Diane. There's a good chance it could. As I live a life more of my dreams, there tends to be an obstacle, a doubter, a mistake, or a setback along the way. With persistence, perseverance, and self-belief, a thing like that might still be there, only I won't be there with it. Goodness me, Roy, how powerful. When A happens, I choose to believe my helpful, effective new belief just a little more. My effective new belief. The link is in the description box below. Congratulations on using your power of choice and taking an action to be here. It not only could be potentially a little bit helpful, it doesn't look all that powerless to me, thanks, brain. Perhaps there is more to what I can do than you are allowing me to see at the moment, brain. These are the resources that we use to create this meeting. Please consider clicking on the link in the description box below. If someone tells me that what is in this presentation is easy, as has been said a few times, it means they have obviously not tried to do it. A thing that I might like to entertain or consider, thanks, brain, is that a thing in here is perhaps a little more possible than my wonderful darling brain is telling me at the moment. It's not trying to keep me small. It's simply trying to keep me safe, untroubled, and a little bit more certain. Whatever I can manage to do at this particular time is wonderfully okay. I am at the coalface. I am doing the work. I'm the person that's trying and falling and getting up and trying again. Whatever I can manage to do is wonderfully okay. Go, you good thing, and more power to you. If I got a bit from the meeting, perhaps I'll give a bit. If a light came on for me a tiny little bit, perhaps I'll pay some of the light bill. Please consider donating to whoever or whatever helps you a little. In this case, I'd ask you to please consider donating to the Greater Good in Action website. There are a lot of the links are in the description box below. There are a lot of wonderful tools there. Perhaps I'll go to that website, donate, and then get one of the tools and maybe work with it a little if I like. Of course, I ain't got to do nothing. However, I do commend that to you as potentially helpful. I'm sorry that I won't get to meet you. I do commend and acknowledge you for making an attempt to have a slightly different life. I do trust that you will make some progress at some point. Go, you good thing.